What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/TalesFromYourServer. This story's called, "A Customer Made It Rain on Me at a Chain Restaurant." So I finished writing my first post on Reddit about the time the staff got to beat the hell out of customers, and it got me thinking of the most interesting customers I have ever had. This is a long one, but the ending is good. This happened about 8 years ago. I swear that this really happened. At the time, I was working at a chain barbecue place. This place had just recently opened, so I was a newer staff member. I was halfway through my shift when I first saw them. The most interesting customers I have ever had. The hostess escorts them over and they all start sitting down. There were 4 of them at first. The first was a guy in his 40s wearing about 25 gold and silver chains around his neck and baggy clothes. The best description would be that he looked like an older guy trying to be a gang member or gangster from the 80s. Then there was a lady the same age as him. She was skinny with long black hair and she seemed high on something. Lastly, there were 2 kids, a boy and a girl, probably around 12. They were quiet the entire time. So for me, when I would get a new table, my mind usually goes into autopilot mode. "Hi, I'm OP, I'll be your server. Would you like anything to drink?" It's the line that I would say to every table. Generic babble. The weird thing I first noticed when I walked up was that the guy wasn't sitting. This was a long booth next to a wall that sat 6 comfortably. He just stood there right next to me at the front of the table as I walked up. And right as I was about to say my opening lines, the guy stops me and introduces himself first. "Hi, my name is Dad." Then he proceeds to introduce everyone at the table. "This is my girl lady, and these are my kids, thing 1 and thing 2. I didn't mind him telling me any of this, but it was weird. There is always a first time for everything, but I have never had anyone introduce everyone at the table before or after. Honestly, unless they were regulars, I didn't ever ask for names. Suffice to say, it was weird, but not an issue. After his intro, I said my lines and went to get their drinks. As I dropped the drinks off, I ask, "Are you ready to order?" Then Dad starts asking questions. Now, I have to mention this. The dad still hasn't sat down. He was still standing at the front of the table at the same spot next to me. They had already been there for about 5 minutes, introductions, drink orders, delivery, and the entire time, he was standing at the same spot. He started to ask questions about the food, but he asked questions like he didn't know what kind of restaurant he was in or what barbecue was. Things like, "You have barbecue, right?" Or, "What's the biggest plate of food you make?" He had a menu and was looking through it, so some of the questions didn't make sense. I answered his questions though, and he said, "You should give me 4 appetizers and 4 large plates of food. The more the better." He never said which items he wanted, so I asked, and he said, "You choose and get extra sides." Now, I've never had to order for someone else before. It's stressful. You don't know what they like or what their budget is. Things could have gone wrong, but I did what he asked. Luckily, he mentioned he liked ribs, so I ordered him 2 sampler food trays. Each one could feed 4 people, 2 large plates of ribs, and a ton of extra sides, plus the appetizers. Also, the dad is still standing next to me. He hadn't sat down once yet. I put their order in the computer and head out to the dining area. As I look out, I see another guy sitting at the table, so I go over. The dad introduces him as his friend, like he does, "This is blank." I get the friend's drink order and bring out the appetizers. No issues. The dad is still standing even after the appetizers came out. He just stood there, eating at the front of the table. A few minutes later, the rest of the food came out. So much it filled the table. The people sitting start to eat, while the dad decided to grab a plate of ribs. The dad then walks to an empty table across from the booth and starts to eat there, all while standing. He didn't sit. He ate ribs while standing. It's doable, but I've never seen anyone else do it before. So after a little bit, the group finishes eating. I box up their remaining food, which was half the table, and grab their bill. At this restaurant, if there is a party of 5 or more, there is automatic gratuity added. I never want to be called a thief or a cheat, so I always told my customers about it. I walked up to the table, handed them the bill, told them about the gratuity, and turned to walk away. The dad stops me and says, "Here." As I turn around to see, he has a roll of cash. looked like 20s and 50s, probably a few thousand in the roll. I stand there as the lady counts out the money and Dad throws it on the table. The bill was hefty, around $250 plus the gratuity added of around $50, so a total of about $300. So she counts $20, $40, etc. He gets to the $300 and keeps going. $300, $320, $340, $400, getting all the way to $480 and stops. He had a lot more money in the wad, so I'm not sure how or why he came up with the number he ended up giving me. It was a $200+ tip. Not complaining, just was confused at the time. Hell, I'm still confused 8 years later. I looked at them and said, "Are you sure?" I then reminded them about the gratuity already added. The dad and lady both say yes. He handed me the money and the family gets up to walk away. I was excited. It was a huge tip, $200, closer to $300. I say goodbye and ask them to sit in my section the next time they come in. They leave and I start cleaning their table. That's when the unexpected happened. Soon after, my manager comes up behind me and says, "You have to come with me right now," with the "you're in trouble" voice. So I walk with her to the kitchen, asking what's wrong. As we walk, she says, "Your table says you stole from them." I was like, "What?" As we keep walking through the kitchen, I started to explain what had happened. It was a short walk, so I didn't have enough time to explain. We walked straight through the kitchen and end up at the to-go area. The area had people sitting, waiting for their to-go orders, a few staff members, and a few teenagers that worked the to-go area. The dad and lady are standing at the counter. The manager and I walk up. My manager says to me, loud enough for others to hear, "They say you stole from them. Pull out the money they gave you." I pull out the wad of cash. Luckily, I didn't get any other cash sales, so all the cash in the wad was from that table. I hand it to her. She looks at the receipt and starts to count. The manager gets to the receipt amount, minus the gratuity, and hands the excess back to the dad, the auto gratuity and all. I was so confused. I had just thought I got the best tip ever, and immediately after, I get accused of theft from the same people who gave the best tip ever. I was speechless. I had literally just counted the cash a few minutes earlier with the dad and lady. The dad stares at the cash that was just handed to him and sifts through it. Then, the dad looks at my manager and says to her face in exact words, "I was wrong." Right after he admitted he was wrong, he hands me back half the stack of money in his hand. He then pulls out another wad, all dollar bills. And I crap you not, he starts to flick them in the air, yelling, "I'll make it rain! I'll make it rain!" This was with the customer sitting there watching and the other staff just looking on. He made it rain on me, at the time a 23-year-old fat guy. He flicked about $40 out while saying that, turns around and walks out. The lady then grabs the money laying all over as fast as she could and shoves it in my hands and runs out the door after the dad. I turn to my manager and say, "Am I in trouble?" The manager looked really confused, looked at me and said, "No, just go back to work." I never saw those people again. That was my most interesting guest when I served. Other than calling me a thief, they were very nice people. Very strange, but super nice. I sadly have so many questions that will never be answered. The manager never apologized to me for accusing me of theft. It was such an interesting experience that I hope one day I will be able to recreate that exact scenario for another server. Everyone should have a guest like this at least once. All in all, it was a good day. I made almost $200 from them alone, and honestly, I wish they would have come back, but I never saw them again. This story's called The Worst Table I've Ever Had, literally right before vacation. I go to greet this two-top and everything goes well. Sprites and a water and our appetizer sampler to start off with. I bring them back their drinks and some bread and then continue with my other tables. About 5 minutes later, I drop off their appetizer. When I go back to check on them, they have barely touched the appetizer. I ask if everything's okay and the woman says they don't like it. I ask if it's the whole thing or if it's just one part of it they don't like. A lot of people don't like our mac and cheese bites, which is part of the sampler, so I always ask. She starts getting an attitude that all of it is gross, that the fried onions are burnt tasting and the cheese fries are cold, and the mac and cheese bites she just can't touch. So I take it all back, and my manager calls for one new one on the fly with extra onions instead of mac bites. Before I dropped it at the dish pit, I felt the fries just to get an idea of where she was coming from, and they were still warm after all of that. So I started to realize they might be a problem. We remade the sampler with the change and brought it out to them. They picked at it for only a minute before their entrees were ready. I brought them out to them and asked if they needed anything. She then told me that the onions were too hot. At first, I thought she meant spicy, but she didn't. She was complaining that the temperature of her food was too hot to consume right away after complaining that it was too cold. She was upset that we served it to me so hot that I can't eat it. I told her that it would cool down quickly and went and got my manager to speak with them. My manager was over there for a while, and when she came back, she looked like she was half a complaint away from quitting her job. Apparently, while she was over there, the woman told her that they, because really it's just the wife speaking, I don't think the husband ever said a word, were upset about the entree as well. They were gonna split the chicken fried steak, but she didn't like the cuts of meat in it, and her husband is only eating it because he's starving. So my manager rings her in a half order of quesadillas to make her happy and to be done with it all. She takes off the appetizer and doesn't charge her for the half order of quesadillas. So the next 10 or so minutes when her food came out and they finished their meal and were relatively quiet, and I go to drop off the check. At this point, the only thing that is on her is her cold beverage and the chicken fried steak. I come back a few minutes later and she is fuming that they are being charged for the chicken fried steak when she didn't like it. Her husband ate the whole entree. They intended on splitting it, but when she didn't like it, he proceeded to eat it. All of it. I didn't say a word and went and got my manager. She goes and talks to them, comps the whole meal, and is done with it. And I really wish I could tell you it doesn't get more ridiculous, but it does. I went to tell them that we took care of their meal and that we were sorry for their bad experience. She asks for a box for her quesadillas and the leftover bit of appetizer. I bring it to her and then she asks for salsa to go. I apologize and inform her that we don't have salsa, and she gets highly irritated. Then proceeds to say, "This is the worst customer service I've ever had. Y'all expected me to pay for things we didn't like, and that's absurd. I want your regional manager's number. I want to explain to her about the poor service here." She's yelling quite loudly at this point. We give her the number and usher her on her way. I almost quit my job that day. Some people, they just go out of your way to make your life hell, man. Oh my god. I'm exasperated just reading that. A little background about me. I'm a 26-year-old female with multiple piercings and bright red hair, dyed. Most notably, I have 15 pieces of jewelry spread across my ears. Also, my lip and nose are pierced. The ladies came into us on a whim for lunch on Friday or Saturday last week and were adorable from the off. They were polite and engaging with me, asking for my recommendations on food, and just all around very pleasant to wait upon. I spent a lot of time just talking to them, chatting about life in general, and asking them questions about themselves. It was a slow day, so I had the time to be able to do this without neglecting my other tables. When I was clearing their mains away, the older lady asked me if she could ask me a question and stated that she didn't want to be rude. She was just curious. At this point, I'm thinking, okay, what am I letting myself in for? But they had been lovely all the time they'd been in, so I said she could ask. She put her finger on her own lip in the place where my piercing is and asked me if it hurt, again saying she didn't want to be rude. I happily explained that yes, it hurt when it got done, but I've had it for a long time now, so it doesn't hurt anymore. I then went on to compare it to her earrings and said it probably hurt when you got your ears pierced, but they don't hurt anymore, do they? She giggled and said she couldn't even remember getting them done, let alone how much it hurt at the time. I explained to her that that's how I feel about all my piercings. I know they must have hurt when I got them done, but I've had them for so long that I don't remember the pain. Her companion then asked me why I had so many piercings, and I explained to them that when I got my first one, I had not long come out of a difficult relationship and wanted something to make me feel different. They lit up, and I said that I got them because they're they're part of who I am and who I've always been, and that it just took a bad experience for me to find myself that way. They also said that my jewelry really suits me and that I should remember the strength they helped me find. So to the ladies that came in for lunch last week, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen and assure you that you were definitely not rude in any way. Most of the older generation tell me that I've ruined my face or that I'm gonna live to regret the decisions I've made with my body, so it was a complete breath of fresh air to have you talk so matter-of-factly about them and compliment me on my choices. You have made my year, and it's gonna take a really amazing table to take the best table of the year spot from you both. I hope you come back in and that I get the pleasure of serving you again. Aw, that's a really awesome story. You know, something I've realized in my long life of 20 years, it really makes everyone happy to be nice to someone. Okay, try it. If someone messes up, be nice to them. It'll make you feel amazing, it'll make them feel amazing, unless they're jerks, then you know, obviously they deserve the jerk treatment. But if you just allow yourself to be nice to everyone, even just a random stranger, you will feel really great about it, I guarantee. Unless you have some weird screwed up reward system in your brain, then I don't know what to tell you. But in general, for the most part, for most people, being nice is an amazing experience that's rewarding to both parties. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.